I'm starting it because I am the president of MAGFest, and I have many opinions about these things, but I don't have the patience to speak about them without profanity. So I'm going to let these guys deal with the panel. I'm just going to let everybody know this is going to be civilized. This is going to be a positive thing. And anybody who thinks otherwise is just going to have their badge pulled immediately by me. So you
All right, hello, thank you all for coming here. This is a much larger crowd than I expected. Hi. We discussed a couple of different possible approaches for this panel, but I think we're just going to keep it loose. We're going to introduce ourselves, and then I, as the person who had the idea for this panel, I'll give a brief rundown of what I came here to talk about today, and then we'll take it from there. So my name's Arthur Chu. I'm an internet guy. Most of the world only knows who the hell I am because I won a lot of money on Jeopardy, representing nerds and gamers, $400,000 on Jeopardy this year, and getting a lot of flack from the internet for that, and getting involved in internet flame wars, etc. I've become a writer, or I was always a writer, but now people are actually paying me for it, which is a shock. But I've been writing for The Daily Beast, Salon.com, not actually a games writer, although my first Polygon piece is going to go up on Monday. It's not great, so whatever. I am writing a lot about problems that we as a community, the nerd community, have. And so I'm going to pass this on to Lisa.
Hello! I am Elisa Melendez. I am a PhD candidate of comparative sociology, studying the intersections of gender and authenticity in music games. So, I'm applying a feminist lens to Rock Band and Rocksmith is basically my vibe. As a day job, I am a college professor as well as a high school teacher, and in my spare time, of which I have none, I sometimes write things for places like, I wrote for Polygon once, Slate once, Fusion, and Miami New Times a few times. Yeah.
I'm Oliver Surplus, and I'm just kind of here in the capacity of like a high school teacher and to keep the civility, and I'm someone who's always interested in rational discussion and keeping it, how the internet can transform to like when you meet people in real life and how remarkable it is.
Oliver doesn't give himself enough credit. He's been on panels and MAGFest from the very beginning, so thank you. We got to have him here. So, what is this panel about? Well, I've been calling it the Gamergate panel, and a lot of people have been calling it that, and that was, I think, the original title, and then it got changed to Toxic Rage in the Gaming Community. I don't want to rehash all the stuff that's happened on the internet in the past few months. What I want to talk about, and what I see the reason for talking about this is that I love the gaming community. I wouldn't be here if I didn't. I love games. I proposed to my wife at MAGFest on MAGFest 9. There she is. Yeah, so. Thank you. There's some problems with the way, with the sort of cultural norms of the community. And one of the things is, and this is a common thing online, but in the gamer community I see it a lot, is these rage storms, is these massive backlashes. And a lot of it has to do with cultural and political things, but often it doesn't. It's, if you try to explain to someone who's not into games why everyone's angry this week, right? Why, and the level of it, I mean, you see that, sports teams win or lose a game, and sports fans like riot and burn down buildings. So there's other problems there. But we have people who like send email campaigns and death threats over weapons getting nerfed in a Call of Duty patch. Diablo 3 is too colorful, and that's a betrayal of the fans, and there's a huge mobilization. The ending of Mass Effect 3, I didn't like the ending of Mass Effect 3. I don't like the ending of a lot of things. I don't like the ending of Lost. I don't like the ending of The Sopranos. But it's only with Mass Effect 3 that we actually had people, and I'm not saying the opinion is wrong, but the people were like threatening a class action lawsuit against people at BioWare for making a bad ending to a game. So there's this And I located, it's true. It's a lot of gamers come from a background where we felt marginalized, where we've been, targeted by bullies, where we feel like society, pushes us to the margins of what we think of as like acceptable culture. That for a lot of times games lived in the gaming ghetto, just like the genre ghetto for people who were into like sci-fi and fantasy. And there was, moral panics. Jack Thompson, I often say like, Jack Thompson actually succeeded in hurting gaming a lot by being such an over-the-top acceptable target that he was so, mean and so nasty and so willing to threaten outright harm, like put people in jail, that people felt like it was okay to respond to him in the same way. And it was okay to, threaten to kill and mutilate him, to threaten him with like ironic jokes about rape, to like make image macros of him being like torn apart and make games about killing him. And that somehow that became normalized, that if the community senses a threat from the outside, somehow it was like okay to respond in kind. And that's certainly not everybody. It's probably not even the vast majority, like 95% of people, but there's an element there. Anita Sarkeesian, who shouldn't have been involved in the past few months because it wasn't about her originally, but it became about her very quickly when she first posted her Kickstarter. And she hadn't made any videos. She hadn't said anything. She said she was going to say something. But the fact that she was going to post a feminist critique of video games on YouTube caused I was there, someone linked it to me that first day and I just sat and watched the YouTube comments roll in, like hundreds of thousands of incredibly angry comments. This like really defensive rage and like really getting really personal, putting on Newgrounds a beat up Anita Sarkeesian game and just asking what motivates that, why does that happen? Why is that something that happens in our community and what are we doing about it? And so that's how I want to start off this conversation. Does anyone else want to?
Shoot. Well, I guess I have not, well, the things might change in the next hour and a half. I have not been a target of a lot of much of anything. The most I've gotten so far has been, I was on the Xbox Live Gamer Spotlight for like a week. And like, my avatar presents itself, has like red hair and glasses and like a pretty dress and I have like a, a little black cat running around. And I'm a sociologist, so as soon as I get a barrage of data, I want to chronicle it, like I can't turn my brain off, and I was like, ooh, this is fascinating. So I took pictures of like every message that I got that wasn't like, hi, or hello, or congratulations, and stuff like that. And it's kind of interesting the things that you get, some of it might have had to do with my gamer score, which is like, which even then is whatever, it's gatekeeping, it's poop. But, a lot of it just happened to be because I had like the audacity to present myself as a woman on the internet. I only got 2 wiener pictures though, that was kind of surprising. I was actually expecting more, but I only got the 2. But a lot of this stuff is kind of interesting because I can kind of look at it from the, removed sociologist chronicling this, and some of the messages that I got are just more funny than anything. And sometimes when you're in this space, you have to laugh to keep from crying. But, talking about this stuff is cool and funny, and we can kind of joke about it. Quite frankly, I'm terrified to be in this room right now. And that's why we need to talk about it.
All right. So I guess we'll start by opening it up for discussion. Does anyone have anything they want to ask or say? Yeah.
When it comes to Gamergate and a lot of sort of nerd rage movements, there's a lot of co-opting of the language of actual persecuted minorities.
Oh God, yes.
And like, especially when they, identify the outer threat, and then there's always the comparisons to the Nazis. But then you have explicit comparisons of the supposed aggrieved minority to like the racial equality movement, the LGBT movement, and then even attempts to tar people who criticize them as being homophobic. A lot of things recently were ableist because of the owner of one of the gambling-friendly websites is apparently disabled. And that seems to be a sort of energizing rhetoric for sort of the hardcore group of people in Gamergate or in whatever the perceived aggrieved minority is. When it comes to a point where you have people comparing themselves to Martin Luther King for getting upset that people make videos about maybe you should talk about video games, is there any way to engage with that population besides just going block, mute, don't engage? With the hardcore groups, is there any way to engage beyond just these people are a problem, block them, and if you see them around here, call the internet police?
That's a big question. I'm going to jump in because I have some personal experience, and a lot of times, well, this is an internet thing more than it is a specific thing, but a lot of times people are trolling. They're trying to get an emotional reaction. So you're already kind of losing if you start thinking in terms of trying to rationally refute the argument. And I could sit here and rationally tell you why exactly it is inappropriate to compare anything over video games to Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King was talking about people who couldn't eat, who couldn't make a decent living, who were getting literally lynched, who were getting killed, and it's not a worthwhile comparison. But just by getting your anger up, by getting your dander up, by triggering you, they've already gotten what they wanted. So in that sense, yeah, just block, just mute, and I've said, a big part of this is a purely technological problem. The technology hasn't caught up to social realities. So it's still very easy to get in someone's face without their consent in a way it wouldn't have been before social media. And social media just needs to catch up. It didn't used to be that people could just teleport into my house and yell at me or even calling me on the phone. It was harder to do that, but now I can find someone on the internet and ruin their day pretty easily, and you have to kludge together tools like the Gamergate blog bot on Twitter and other media to try to control that. But the other side of it is, the other half of the question that I perceive is there are people who do actually feel aggrieved and marginalized and persecuted, and I'm not saying that's wrong. It's true. We all have our problems. We all have our cross to bear, and a big part of this in particular is a lot of people in gamer culture saying, well, just because I'm white, just because I'm American, doesn't mean that I don't suffer, that I don't have problems for being, nerdy, for being in a hobby that's been maligned. And the main response in this context I would have is that yes, but there are people who have had to deal with that and with racial prejudice and with gender prejudice. And it's not an either or thing. And it's also not really dismissing your concerns to point out that things like race and gender are very big global concerns that are bigger than your local concerns about you personally having a shitty time in life. And that's, Elisa.
And I think it's also a kind of blowing out of proportion what the sort of aim of some of these feminist critiques are actually aiming to do. Because a lot of stuff has sort of been positioned as these are outsiders who come to take our stuff away from us. We need to stop this from happening. Whereas, talking about things like problematic fun or that diversity panel, it's we're not, I don't do this because I hate games. I do this because I love them and I love them and I want to see them in a better light. And I see, the ways that people have talked about video games, when I try to use video games to teach concepts in my classroom and some of the pushback that I get from that. It's no, video games are amazing and they can teach us so many things. So I'm I love video games, and that is why I think it's important to look with a critical lens at the things you love. And that's not to say that I'm gonna take things away. I'm trying to add more things so that the people that are already a part of this and have been a part of this for some time can also have different stories be told and have different kinds of mechanics and different kinds of experiences. But a lot of that is positioned as such a major threat that, you know, it requires some sort of a big general response.
The only thing that needs to be co-opted from that is how we've adapted logical fallacies to cover modern ones, like how reducto ad absurdum became reducto ad hilarium. And I think they should do that similar, for your argument is instantly invalid if you make any comparisons like that.
So, yeah, go ahead.
All right, so when the Gamergate kind of went down, there was media attention on that, and one thing that I noticed was not even like gamer media attention, but like there was an article in the Washington Post about it. And one thing that was coming, there was attention put on Anita Sarkeesian, who wasn't even involved in the beginning of Gamergate, but she got dragged into it, about how she had received threats and had to cancel an appearance at she was speaking at some university, she had to cancel it because she had received threats and she wasn't confident in how the university was handling security at the event. So, from the response that I saw from a certain side of the discussion, is the kind word to use, of the discussion was that, oh, she's just making that up. She's making that up for attention. To me, that seems like it has such a preconception of, oh, they're out to do something wrong. That's not giving, that's displaying so little faith in what another person's perspective might be, that, oh, they can't be doing it for positive reason, one reason or another, they're doing it for their own gain. How do you, what was like the response to people like that who are just so bent on not thinking that what they are doing could be causing people to be hurt?
Louis, you want to feel this one, please?
Yeah, just put the mic in my face all the time because I have things to serve. I feel like so much of this stuff, and like every answer that I might have to potential questions like that, it's like to take a minute and step back and try to figure out, like, just take like a second and try to feel some sort of empathy for your fellow person. And kind of think of it like, what benefit might be gained by making something like that up, rather than just having her like just go and reach a room full of people and reach like nice like super wide audience. There's a whole lot of like just sit back like a second. And I think a lot of sort of like the issue with like a lot of the social media stuff is like anonymity is cool. It can like help us like work things out. It gives us a space to talk, which is really, really cool. But I think at the same time, instead of like Anita Sarkeesian, who is a person who does this kind of work, it's like, Anita Sarkeesian, like she's like no longer a human. And once you are no longer a human, I think it becomes easier to attack this like entity rather than thinking of, you know, a person that's like, it's got a lot of like crap to deal with, and this could potentially be like really, really crappy for somebody, and how would you like it? Yeah.
When in doubt, I use pop culture examples, and there was a conversation in the film Interstellar that I felt explained it pretty well. Granted, it's a little different one, but it's when Matt Damon's character refers how evolution has not reconciled concern and empathy beyond our line of sight, and I think that can be applied in an implicit sense to this problem.
Well, I thought about it, so this is what I'm going to say. There's two things, and one of them is that people kind of focus very much on how things affect them and don't really. So, like for instance, a lot of the talk about, you know, people making things up for attention. Your perception of what's going on is the attention. Your perception of it is, oh, this person's being pushed into my newsfeed. I'm seeing them. I'm getting deluged by information about them. This must be what they want. This is the reward they're getting, is my attention. When really that might not be very important at all. Anita Sarkeesian, you know, her not going and doing her talk, her not, her feeling like she might get shot, her, even if you don't believe she felt like she might get shot, her having to forego, an event that she planned for and break a bunch of commitments, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
I've just started doing public speaking, but that's a big deal when you do that. And to think like your attention was the important part of that, it's a very me-centered kind of way of looking at it. And the other part is, there's a woman who wrote about the Kool-Aid point, right, where people have this tendency to like once someone gets sufficiently popular, it's okay to attack them because everyone's drunk the Kool-Aid and now I'm the brave rebel. And so it's why does everybody think she's good? Why does everybody think she's, where is the criticism? Where's the skepticism? Well, I think it was Chris Rock who did a thing which is like, when you complain about being stuck in traffic, shut up, you're not stuck in traffic, you are traffic. You are the criticism. This is the skepticism. I go online and I hear nothing but Anita Sarkeesian's making it up for attention. Anita Sarkeesian is a con artist. Anita Sarkeesian is, manipulating people. That's actually the bulk of the public reaction because everyone collectively thinks they're the brave rebel, speaking up against this incredibly popular person. It's like the popular person that nobody actually likes, right? And this is a repeated pattern, is that someone it's okay to attack this person because they're popular, and that makes them not actually popular anymore. That makes them controversial. But people still think of themselves as the underdog, as the rebel when they speak out. And it's especially very common with women on the internet who have opinions. It's very common for people to say, why is it that women are protected from criticism and then go on to criticize them in very harsh terms? It's this weird kind of double mindset. All right, does someone over here have a question? I saw, you with the, great, yeah.
All right. I was thinking, Anita Sarkeesian's videos are like feminism 101, and yet she's getting attacked for it. Do you think that, the Gamergate idea is attacking feminism as a whole, or just, the ideas? Because I feel like they're attacking feminism as an idea because she talks about things, she doesn't go really deep into them. She's just interested in them, and all of a sudden people are angry. You know what I mean?
It's a target for the field.
Yeah.
I'll go first. I feel weird being because I'm a guy. So, I'm not initiated yet. I'm just a pawn.
An image is worth 1,000 words.
It's true. One of the things that really gets to me is I was a liberal arts major in college. I talk a lot about movies and music and other media, and the level of critique in the feminist frequency videos is a lot weaker than you might hear when talking about feminist criticism of movies. Obviously, I don't think feminist criticism of movies is mainstream. I think the movie industry is still super sexist, but there's a lot of outspoken feminist critics. They do their thing, they say their thing, they have a little impact in the culture. Hollywood mostly ignores them, and we all move on with our lives. But somehow that doesn't happen with gaming, and that's kind of what I want to get at. There's an element in our community that's hyper-defensive about gaming to a degree to which cinephiles aren't about movies, or music lovers aren't about music. My feeling is, I'm someone who likes hip-hop. Hip-hop has a lot of sexist stuff in it, but there's a lot of hip-hop fans who will get mad at feminist criticisms of it, but it's not this huge, you're not allowed to say it or you're gonna get dogpiled for the rest of your life. And I think that's an interesting contrast.
People get really mad,
Yeah, and I think there's also, a sort of wider issue at stake where just the definition of what feminism is and how it's portrayed, and the idea that yes, I am a gender scholar and I've been doing this for the last too many damn years. Loans. Been doing this for too long. But I do this every day. But it's all the stuff that I read is it's Inception, a bajillion layers deeper than so much other stuff that might be displayed. But I think just in general, the way that feminism tends to be portrayed, and kind of ironic, t-shirt is ironic, the idea that maybe people don't realize that there is no such thing as a feminist hive mind, necessarily. I was on a panel, my very first panel, I was with 2 other women who would probably maybe identify themselves as feminists, and there was relatively strong disagreements about the way that we even would read the same character. And I think her popularity and maybe makes it so that people sort of maybe elevate this one umbrella definition, and then that's all people get, and then they don't necessarily take the time to do any more research other than she thinks these games are shit. You know, that's
the black and
not.
white approach. You see it in a lot of concepts and words, being the more historical scholar, I'm sometimes troubled by how those with an agenda have used that, be it for feminism or even words that actually don't mean much, like heretic or pagan. They're scary sounding words, but they don't mean much when you break it down.
All right, I'm trying to keep track here. And over there with the glove. Yes. I'm trying to pick part of your outfit.
In politics, streams are often encouraged. Could this be affecting our culture, and what should we do or could do about it?
We're sharing a mic, so I'm.
You're so sweet. I mean, it is a, what the sort of major takeaways that a lot of this could be seen as a symptom of an overall larger problem, where it's this is a person that can shout and make it sound really, really cool for this particular news network. And then this is the other person that can shout and make it particularly cool, but this one might have stylish glasses. And this is for another network. And I think that's that is kind of an overall kind of segment that it's be loud, be heard. I mean, am I right? I don't care, I'm awesome, I'm popular. That's kind of a lot that matters in a lot of conversations, and I think a solution is to sit in this room, look at you being awesome and sitting here and listening to people, and maybe not everybody here has the same opinions about everything, but then it's you're listening to stuff and you're talking to stuff and you're having an actual civilized discussion. What? Those are things that can actually happen, and maybe Twitter isn't the best medium, but I think it's everybody has their own. Cool thing about the internet is that we can have our own sort of spaces to do stuff and share things that can do stuff. It makes it quick. Quick is immediate. You have to be a part of this conversation now, and then worry about being right later. And that's something that needs to, I don't know how, you probably have some thoughts, but that is definitely a symptom of a wider problem for sure.
Fourth row back over here. Yeah.
Hey.
You've been having it for a while.
Thank you. First of all, I wanted to thank you as a person who identifies himself as an original geek. I was, and who has 4 daughters. I thank you for taking the courage to sit here and talk about this.
Thanks.
Thank you.
There's 2 things that you brought up during the talk that kind of sparked, and I thought would be good to at least address. You mentioned the sports analogy earlier, or at the beginning, and Scott Kurtz, the writer of PvP, did a comic strip that struck me when he talked about you never hear about a mob of angry nerds burning up a city block because they didn't like the end of Battlestar Galactica. That you hear about these events occurring with sports fans, engaging in this violent behavior, but you don't hear elite nerds doing this. But then you have this whole Gamergate, and maybe what we're seeing is that same type of philosophy, the same type of mentality, that whatever it is, that propensity to violent behavior, just being expressed in a different way. The second thing that struck me is, as an original geek, I played D&D, I watched science fiction, long before that thing we all call the internet existed. And the thought is that really, how much of a factor that existence of this, like you said, the ability for people to essentially teleport to your house and communicate with you, how much of that made a difference? I don't think I ever would have heard something like this occur back when, the only way you could communicate with other people is by, getting your acoustic coupler and logging onto a bulletin board system. And for those that don't understand those terminology, you understand what I'm saying. It's just curious in terms of how much can we lay on the feet of the internet, the creation of this construct, in terms of generating what happened.
Right, absolutely. And that all hits on a lot of stuff I've spent a lot of time thinking about. So the first part is, one of the things about nerd culture, if you want to call it that, is that a lot of us identified as introverted people, as loners, as weird people, and so we thought we were immune to, this tribalism, the stuff that sociologists study, this in-group, out-group, behavior. And so we joined a big group of people who are all like, we're all individuals, and we're in this big group of individuals, and all of us hate those other people who are joiners and who are conformists, and it's predictable. It's incredibly predictable. And it's a problem because it makes it hard to recognize it in yourself. It's a part of life. We're always going to have loyalties, tribal loyalties. Sports, the thing about sports is we all know how fake it is to some degree, right? Like sports franchises are created as businesses. They're created to make money. They're set up by a central body, and yet it's part of our culture. It's very important to us to have these things to identify with. But the danger is always when you lose track of the wider picture. That it's just a game, it's not worth beating someone up over, that the person rooting for their team is doing it for the same reasons that you're rooting for your team. And the really toxic thing happens when people start confusing their tribal loyalties for this, for right and wrong. And I belong here, I deserve to be here, this is my land, this is my community. This is, I have the right tribal loyalties, your loyalties are the wrong ones. You're an alien, you need to be kicked out. The thing about the internet, and I'm gonna try to tie this into that point, is that the internet's enabled us to form these communities much faster. It's increased the rate at which these things can happen. And that can be good. I was one of those lonely kids who found a community for the first time because of the web. And there are communities that form around the most ridiculous things, right? Like fandoms. It's not ridiculous. It's awesome. It's great. There's nothing dumb. There's nothing any dumber about being a Harry Potter fan than a Yankees fan. But both of those things are things that draw people together. Yeah. Well, we'll discuss that later. But it's a human grouping. Tribal loyalty is a good thing and a bad thing. It's always got the good thing where you have your friends, but then being friends with someone means you're enemies with their enemies. And so you see fandom wank on live, you see different fandoms fighting for no other reason than that they're different and they're in our space. And we want to control the whole space, so we got to kick them out. So it's a push and a pull. You can't. There's a baby and there's a bathwater, and I don't know the right answer for how. It's like the question of human nature. How do you love your country and not hate foreigners? How do you love your family and not hate other families?
I like to try to focus on the sort of positive things that the internet has given me. Slash fit. Just Dorian and Iron Bull for days. Just do that. Just forever. Just feed it to me. All the good things that the internet has given to me. Like when I was a kid, all I had was my brother, and I learned to read with a Nintendo Power. That's how that worked. He would just hand it to me, like, here, help me. All right, I just do that. That was all I had, and then. And it was really cool. It's like, hey, you're also a girl, you also do this stuff that's really, really cool. And then it's like, oh, there's this larger group of girls that do stuff and they go to conventions and things. That's a thing you can do and meet other people that do that. And sometimes you dress up as the thing you like. What? That's amazing! That is so cool and it's awesome. And I love to sort of focus on the good stuff. so that the bad stuff doesn't like stab my heart into a million pieces like all the time. But it's you know, I'm just gonna keep going back to like just like take a seat, take several seats, sit down, have a think as to how much does my dislike of XYZ, how much does a couple of PSI lower than a ball needs to be? Sorry, Deflategate. This wasn't the Deflategate camera? Oh. There's a lot of gates. So many gates. It's all the gates. It's like just like sit back for like a second and just like things like take a nap. And if you wake up, you may not still be pissed about this. Like it's like take a nap. Like, do something that makes you happy. Make something that makes you feel amazing. Buy a pretty piece of clothing that makes you feel fierce. Like, do something that makes you feel good. And like, if, you know, and then hopefully maybe you might not even be mad about this thing tomorrow.
The word reactionary is probably one of the few ones that does deserve its negative reputation, even if it doesn't really mean that much itself.
Over here on my right. So, yeah. Yeah.
Rock, paper, scissors.
So, I'll fight.
So first of all, I really appreciate the, kind of the nature of this panel as a calm or at least polite discussion environment. But I kind of wanted to talk about earlier you saying you know appreciated that what you had, how this makes you feel. That it can be terrifying, and that we say. People say really horrendous, absurd things to other people, and it seems that in this community, particularly, we tolerate that exceptionally compared to anywhere else. Like, you were talking about trolls and how you react to trolls, and you just block them, but that's become almost expected. Like, there's going to be 5 or 1 or however many percent that are just going to, you know, make death threats or tell you that they're going to rape you. And that's okay. Some people do that, I guess, and that's how we react as a community. Some people just do that. That's a natural danger of what happens. And so there's at least a couple people in this room who have been witness to my less than polite reaction to Gamergaters. And that's okay, but at what point do you have to stop saying, I'm going to have a reasonable discussion with you about your right to make rape threats? At what point do we as a community have to say, no, that's not acceptable no matter how you do it. We're not going to accept that as a necessary byproduct of the other things we're trying to accomplish as a community and as we try to garner solidarity. When you just say, no, I don't respect your ability to say that, I don't respect that as part of our community, and not have a rational discussion about it, but just respond to it the same way you would respond to somebody just making constant race threats or any kind of threats anywhere else.
Perhaps by going back to the origins of it, because it's likely reactionary and just, I don't know how that word even got co-opted, because it's one of those words that really doesn't have more than one definition, so maybe it was just someone throwing a dart at a board and decided to use that particular word. You know, I have no idea, but I think what we do in history, we need to go back to the source, and oftentimes the answer is a lot more boring than our perceptions of it, and maybe it does need to become boring and take away its power, something like that, you know?
I mean, this is another thing that I thought a lot about, so bear with me, because I had a lot of thoughts. No, but there was a really awesome tweet that I saw, which was, it was hilarious, and it was like, the thesis of the nerd met the antithesis of the jock, and the synthesis was the gamer. You know, which is a Marx joke, so it's very nerdy already, but it's like, and it's definitely not true of the entire, or even I think most of the gamer community, because, you know, when Yahtzee came out with his videos, he's like, I don't give a shit about multiplayer, I just want a good story. And I was like, that's me, okay? I don't want to beat anybody when I play games, I just want to have the experience. But, yeah, there's a lot of, you know, we're all guys, we're not all guys, but we are not all guys. But a lot of us, with the people that the marketers thought they were reaching towards with video games were guys who were raised with these same expectations of masculinity, of dominance, of competition, but who weren't in sports because they weren't good at sports, because they just didn't want to be, because they had Asian parents who didn't believe in sports. But was just it was a different outlet, a different channel for that kind of competitive urge. And so where's the other place it's okay to say, I'm gonna rape you, is in the football field. And it's actually a more cloistered, I know high school football players who have told me, man, if you could actually hear what people say, but we just don't talk about it. When we have scandals about bullying in the locker rooms of the NFL teams, we just don't talk. That's expected. That's what you do, because this is a masculine culture that's about competition, and so anything you can do to intimidate your opponent, gain a psychological edge over them, it's about winning. And recent, little fiascos like what happened in the fighting game community when you had an actual reality show where a female, it was Street Fighter, right? And she was getting sexually harassed by her own coach. Not even like in an actual competition. Her coach thought he should say, I want to smell you real close and stuff like that, to throw her off her game, to train her, because that is what she should expect when she goes into a fighting game tournament. And when this blew up and there was a fight over it, there was a long-time fighting game enthusiast who posted, I don't want to see fighting games become like StarCraft. I don't want to see it be like, oh, GG, and good job, and nice. StarCraft's not even that nice, but the fact that you say thank you to an opponent after you beat them, it's like, no, fighting games, this was our this was our football. This is where we had this hyper-competitive where you did anything you could to make your opponent lose, and that's not. We all, none of us are exactly the same when we play a game as we are in the rest of our lives. It's a game, it's for fun, but it's not a completely value-neutral thing when you decide, when I play a game, I'm going to stop thinking of my opponent as a person, and anything goes. That's very dangerous. It's a dangerous mindset to go down, and it's what's led to a lot of bad stuff happening in the world of sports among athletes who are, by and large, not bad people, but they're in this extremely high-pressure environment where if winning is everything, stuff happens, cheating scandals happen, people losing their shit and committing crimes happen. And, I think we agree that we should draw the line before rape threats and death threats and games, but the question is why is that encouraged? And it's there's this side of it, that does push a lot of women out of gaming, that does push anyone who's vulnerable out of gaming, because it's if I'm gay and you can actually get to me more by using homophobic slurs because I'm gay, then suddenly I have a weakness, and suddenly, I'm an easier person to beat, and if gaming is about beating people, I'm getting pushed out. It's that kind of thing. If gaming becomes about competition and about beating other people, it pushes people out. That's the problem.
It's also troubling in sports because it reveals a pathology about, and it's going to fester if you have to suppress it, especially when your opponent, your competitor, inevitably becomes your teammate. So what do? Just push it down and say, oh, I didn't mean that, or something like that? And maybe if it is underground, it's unhealthy, just in a different way. Because opponents do become teammates often.
There's people in the back who've had their hands up for one, so someone way in the back, yes, you.
Give me cheap seats.
Do you have a question?
After they do something behind your back, and then you don't want to be around them, they're just like that. stuff like that, but, I feel that way when someone pushes my buttons, or when I'm minding my own business, but they feel like they have to come and antagonize me. So, I don't know where people come from, I get it, but, I don't do that, I have to work on my self-control, and I can't be going around saying, I have to slap her down. I understand.
Thank you so much. So hands, you sir in the second row, you've had your hand up for a while? Yeah.
Just letting you know, I'm also a sociologist, and I study, my thesis was in nerd masculinity.
Oh, awesome.
So I'm a social psychologist, which probably means something to you. But part of being a gender scholar as well, it's a little difficult calling myself a feminist, even though that I study masculinity.
No, but that's totally.
It's still the same thing. So trying to tell people that I'm a feminist, but you study men. That's all you study is men. Why are you a feminist? It's like, because I study gender. Then why aren't you studying gender studies? I'm like, because that's just what it's called. It's a problem. Unfortunately, it's an unfortunate problem with the branding of it.
Yeah.
I mean, when you have the word women, you're like, women politics. Oh, women are taking over the politics of that. So so I have to spend a class saying, yes, I'm a feminist, but for God's sake, it's just what happened because someone said in the 50s. That's what we're calling it. We're calling it feminism. So deal with it.
Yeah. So like to speak to that point, like part of my BA in Women's Studies was I had to take a sociology of men class, which was awesome. And what people sort of don't recognize is that they think oftentimes the feminist movement, because it has fem in the name, that is all about women. Problem is that what ends up happening when you're a feminist is some really cool things happen, like I would have students, I would have male students that were nursing majors, and they did not want to admit that in public. Or male students that wanted to do early education and not be college professors. I did not want to admit that in public. And when we sort of do the work of realizing that, these binaries are crap and socialization matters, and when we do that work, it's good for everyone. And you could be a dude and a feminist, and oftentimes, we need to study this idea of like toxic masculinity and having to fit into a certain butch ass mold in order to be a man. It's real men do burn, real men do burn, bullshit. It's all a social construction, and it's okay. Be a feminist. Don't be worried about the femme in it. We're working for everybody. And it's sort of like gender is a prison for a lot of people. It's just that certain people are served coffee in that prison and get really nice prisons, and then some of us get really crappy ones. But it's thank you for doing the good work and being not afraid to actually say that you're a feminist, because we need more. We need more folks doing.
But what's happening right now with Gamergate, or not Gamergate, but just all this talk of culture, whatever, is because when we talk about gender, it focuses particularly on women, even though that a lot of the discussion that comes out of it, a lot of the defense mechanisms, God knows how many theories that I could be throwing out at you, talking about men defense mechanisms, men marketing. If we're going to be talking about game culture, it needs to have a very strong understanding of masculinity as well as femininity as a reaction to the culture that is going on right now.
Isms in general are problematic. Communism, elitism, feminism, it's packaging, like you said though, it's marketing, and that's disingenuous to me, but it's also life.
I also like strategic essentialism in a way, where it's sort of like, if my labeling, like even though I know that sometimes like labels are crap, and I understand that the word feminist is an issue, like, you know, maybe being like a womanist, and maybe like the idea of feminism, especially because it was such like an old middle-class white lady thing, for so long it still kind of is. You know, and because you're like, that label doesn't really apply to me as like a queer woman of color, you know, like it doesn't necessarily apply to me as much, but you know, I guess, you know, like my own sort of like privileged experiences as, you know, having the advanced education, having a platform, and, you know, like Twitter person, and, you know, all that stuff. And I will say, for the purposes of this thing, if like my using the word feminism and identifying myself as a feminist makes somebody look at that and go, well, hey, well, she's kind of cool, and like she has things that I agree about, and she says that that's like feminist kind of stuff, and like if that can kind of tweak like one thing, then yeah, I will take up the label for the purposes, you know, of doing that work. And then, okay, so now you're in, now you get it, now here's a stack of books where we will deconstruct a lot of this stuff that you just, you know, that's, yeah.
All the way in the back with the hat.
Oh, the hat!
That's how
Yes.
Style.
What is your opinion of the support of the hashtag not your sheep?
Oh yeah, this got me in trouble before, but I'll jump right into it. Okay, so every time we talk about minorities in the broad sense of the term, not necessarily numerical minorities, but you know, so that includes anyone who has less power, women, LGBT people, people of color. We always have to start by saying, okay, we're not a monolith. There's no central council dictating our opinions. The funny thing being that the fact that we're not a monolith and that there's no central council means that some of us can be wrong. That's allowed, it's possible, it's completely possible. Women who are a minority, despite being like 51% of the US population, you find all kinds of opinions, including some pretty horrible ones. There's some of the loudest and most vocal opponents of feminism are women against feminism. And one of the, see, we get into a confusing thing because it's true, there's a little bit of a rhetorical trap where we've started saying, okay, listen, white guys, just stop and listen for a second, because there's a lot of information that you don't have about what it's like to be a woman, or what it's like to be non-white, or what it's like to be non-straight, and we want you to listen to people who've had those experiences. That's true, that's good, that's very important. But that doesn't mean those people can't ever be wrong. We're all human beings. And what it comes down to is when you start playing it as just a simple game of identity politics, like my opinion trumps yours because, you know, I have more oppression categories than you do. This like joke that people make out of it. Well then yeah, it becomes self-defeating because in a population of even like hundreds of people, much less thousands or millions, you'll always find someone who will say something. You always have to find someone who will hold some opinion. There are, you know, Asians. There's actually a lot of Asians who say like, oh, I think racism is a joke. I think that everything's fine, and I think you're making a big deal out of nothing. That doesn't mean they're right. I'm as Asian as they are, and I think they're 180 degrees wrong. That's an interesting conversation to have, and it's a conversation to have about why they think that, why they say that. Some of them are saying that because it gets clicks, just like some of the people who agree with me say things just because it gets clicks. Some of them might have genuinely different experiences from me, and I'm interested in hearing about it, even though I still disagree. But it's a conversation. But the hashtag Not Your Shield was basically about, you know, no, we're gonna stop this conversation. We're gonna stop it cold by saying, here's our minorities, and they're saying you're wrong, and you, the person we're talking to right now, is white, so you have to shut up right now. And I mean, the biggest problem I have with that is that in this universe of people commentating on stuff, it's usually not white guys who start talking about issues of racism and sexism. There's a stereotype that's supposed to like, oh, this is white guys filled with white guilt from San Francisco, or hipsters, who are starting to talk about it, but real minorities don't care. That's an old delegitimization tactic. In the 1960s, with Martin Luther King, there were a lot of people saying, most black people don't care. It's white agitators who are pushing this. It's the white-led Communist Party who's pushing it, and people like MLK are just a front. That's a very old strategy. What actually happens is that, the example I like to use is like who broke the story about Resident Evil 5, saying, okay, Resident Evil 5 has got some problematic representations of African people. It was Nagai Kroll, who is a black man. Nobody remembered that because he started talking about it and no one paid attention until Polygon and Kotaku picked it up, and Stephen Totilo and Ben Kuchera picked it up, and I was like, oh, here's some white guys who are making it an issue because no one listened when he said it. It was women who started talking about issues of women in gaming, but it didn't become an issue until men started writing about it. And this is kind of the thing, like, I always say your role as an ally, as a man, my role when talking about feminism is people will listen to me who won't listen to women. And it's my job to kind of talk about it. And then if you try to like delegitimize me and say you're a man, you can't talk about it, what you're really saying is telling women who want to talk about it, you're standing alone. You have to take the heat by yourself. And that's a lot to ask of anybody who's already in a disadvantaged position. And the flip side is, the not your shield side, is that if you're the side that's saying, everything's okay, I disagree there's a problem, I'm okay with the status quo, you are aligning yourself with the big mass of, you know, people who are not disadvantaged. If I want to be the good Asian, and it's an easy thing to do, and say, I don't think there's a problem, I'm agreeing with the whole mass of white people who want to think there's no problem. I'm taking a power position there. I'm taking a privilege for myself. And that's the really pernicious thing, is you're taking that privilege and you're trying to take it away from other people. You're telling Asians who think there is a problem that they can't have white guys back them up because the white guys aren't allowed to talk about race. You know what I mean?
To me, the key to a healthy debate is simply to deny all terms and definitions and talk about how we're similar rather than different. And that's what I always try and do.
I had like a really weird like not your shield moment relatively recently, which is kind of interesting. So I wrote this thing for Polygon as of E3. And it was in June, and it was basically me, it was just like my second year at E3, but my first one where I was actually like working and doing something, and I was just going, and I had press appointments, because I'm like, I guess I'm pressed now, I'm gonna make appointments, I'm gonna play games. And I played games, and the things that I happened to have appointments for that day just happened to all either feature lady protagonists or lady NPCs that looked relatively fleshed out, and I didn't even like think about it until I was sort of like running it down, and I was like, that's really cool, like that's really awesome. Juxtaposed with the sort of like we issue with the like women are too hard to animate sort of thing, and then I was like, oh damn it, I was feeling so good today about the status of women in gaming, and then, you know, we have, you know, women are too hard to animate gate. You know, I was like, damn it, and I was like, I just wanted to like hold on to like my touchy-feely, awesome feeling for like a second, and so I decided to write about it, and it was like, hey, you want to like put that sentiment on paper? I'm like, sure. So, you know, I did that, and it was like, kind of like a, hey, it is getting better, but what I found was that post, you know, after August and everything after that, you know, I thought that, you know, my article had kind of died, but then like in the wake of that, it sort of sprang back up, and then I had people start messaging me saying, I really appreciate what you're saying, like these critics have gotten it so overblown, like you have your representation and thank you for acknowledging that, and I'm like, whoa. You're telling me that you're going to take that segment of the piece that says this is really cool, and then you're not going to take the part that says, damn, I was disappointed, we could do so much better though, right? And I was like, if you are reading that piece and you are telling me, hey look, a brown girl said you're fine, we could just like pack up, feminism's over, we're awesome, brown girl said it, you know, now we're good, like, you know, and I just like tweeted, I was like, miss me with that, Esh. Right? There is room for celebration, there is also room for critique, and the only reason that we have gotten this far, the only reason that I could write that positive article is because people spoke out before and said, this might be an issue, maybe you want to like stick some fun in your game, that might be good. But to sort of go over that point, like it's really, really frustrating to be a marginalized voice and have these conversations, and then the only time that it will either get A, traction, or B, payment for having these thoughts is if a white dude said, you know, like a white guy says it, which sucks because these conversations have been happening forever within our own communities. It's just that our voices aren't, you know, the folks in capital P power. Thankfully, we have a lot more like really awesome spaces. I do also recognize the idea that sometimes it is nice to have, you know, someone with, you know, more Twitter followers or someone, you know, with a larger mouthpiece to be able to say things and help us out. At the same time, you would do so much better to like, maybe don't say stuff, maybe like retweet us, you know? There was a sort of like, I believe it was Lee Alexander, who I worship and adore. Like she wrote, I think, a great piece of like how to be an awesome ally, things to do and like things not to do. You know, like amplify the marginalized voices. You know, rather than being like, well, I as a white male also agree with you. Like, yeah, that's nice, but also, you know, like we're also been saying this stuff. So if you want to like share that, that'd be great. You know, things.
All right. Up in front, yes.
One thing, at least with this, is that this is the first time I ever heard of a lot of this. I've never heard of Anita Sarkeesian. I've never heard of half the communities that think Gamersgate is a significant issue. And I think a lot of people probably have the same thing where we're coming into encountering it for the first time on our Facebook feeds and not quite sure what to do with. But I think a lot of us also agree that we don't want people to be afraid when it comes to video games or coming together. We want anybody to feel like they can walk through the door of this hotel room, let out a Colossus roar, feel that part of the gaming community. We don't want the people that are like, this, you know, is about ethics in gaming journalism to be the face of, we don't want that to be the face of gaming. So I guess my question is, where do all the folks who may not know about socio-gender theory or what can we do to make things better?
Google. I love you for asking that question. That it was like a genuine, like, what can I do? Help. I think that definitely, like, I will give you my card at the end. I have cards with my contact info, and also kind of recognizing that going to the sources is awesome, but we also have a limited amount of energy to devote to the cause of educating folks as well. So it's, you know, like I don't mean it as a slight to say that Google is your friend, but it sometimes is, because on top of, you know, shouldering a lot of, you know, the terrifying burden of, you know, facing micro and macro aggressions on the daily, then we have to like educate people and then like teach people why things are wrong. But the fact that you want to learn, that is an excellent first step, and I will be happy to do that and help out and point you to a lot of really awesome voices. And just like, you know, like search around, like find like one person that you think is cool, that might have interesting things to say, and see who they're sharing, and then just like let it, and snowball sampling, snowball sampling, and just like sort of like go from there, you know? Start at Wikipedia, and just go from there, but then like actually like look at some sources and stuff, you know, and look at, you know, maybe like search for syllabi for like intro courses and see what the reading lists are, you know, like if you want to make the world a better place, it's going to take a little bit of work, but then if everybody does like a little bit of work, then it's going to be really cool, you know, and thank you for at least, you know, having the desire, and the desire is a great first step.
Don't suppress your natural curiosity. I mean, not just as a historian, I got a good story about citations because it's the natural thing to do, not just scholarly or academic sources, but sometimes you'll want to use Google. And I came across an interesting article on the many I wrote, and it said, a phrase that I think is especially important in it. It doesn't seem like anyone in his life was particularly giving him a hard time, but that he was giving himself a hard time and picking up on any critical or negative reactions directed at men in general as a way to amplify his negative thoughts. Now initially I thought, it's the point that matters. And then I decided I would look at the author, because I believe in citations, and he's sitting right over here. And that's why there's never any doubt that it's not necessarily the idea that's important, but we also must respect the information as part, the citations, as part of imbibing the information, because that's how, like, the social constructs of information should work. It's in the ether, but I think we have to be respectable to the authors. And I like that point you made.
Oh,
I,
what you got?
I hate to do this
Break
because this
my
is
heart.
a very
Break my
effective
heart.
conversation, so
Break
I'm
my
going to
heart.
make an executive call. Hi everybody, I run Nations. We have another panel about to start. We've already gone 15 minutes over. But if everyone is willing, at 7:30 the room is open. Or let me double check that.
Ooh. To be continued?
Yes.
Cliffhanger?
Yes, at 7:30 the room is open. If you would all wish to, we can continue the conversation at 7:30.